Hi there folks, Sam here, and today I'm going to talk to you about my predictions for the new Assassin's Creed. Now whether it's going to be called Assassin's Creed Empire, Osiris, Egypt, who knows, but from the rumour mills running around and from the leaked image, I think we can safely say it's going to be set in ancient Egypt, which my first actual impression is I hope they don't do away with historical figures entirely. I hope there's some sort of figure we can introduce in. I think we're a bit late for Cleopatra, but I don't know, some of the pharaohs perhaps. One of the favourite parts for me of the Assassin's Creed games has been meeting historical figures like Da Vinci and Machiavelli in Assassin's Creed 2, Paul Revere and Washington in Assassin's Creed 3, and then in Syndicate, I mean, you had Charles Darwin, Charles Dickens, Alexander Graham Bell. It's so interesting to see your character interact with them, especially in Syndicate. I very much enjoyed that. Now, from what we've seen released or what we've heard rumoured, the character is likely to be an escaped slave, which allows them to be very quiet and they can limit their dialogue to a few pieces. And to be honest, I'm not really. Ezio was nice as a chatty character, but everyone since hasn't been particularly good, apart from Jacob in Syndicate. Now, as always, we see a lot of eagle imagery in and around the Assassin's Creed games. Your eagle vision, the eagle cry when you do a leap of faith. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I think we're going to get an eagle pet on this game, purely because of the time period. Eagles would have been kept as hunting companions, and because Far Cry Primal did so much with animal companions, and I could see the eagle being something very similar to the owl in that. So if you're unfamiliar with the owl in Far Cry Primal, basically you summon the owl and there was a short cooldown on it, and it would fly ahead of you into an enemy camp. It would let you scout out the area, you could mark people, so you knew where they were, and when you were ready to stop using the owl, you could send it to attack one of them. So an eagle would fit the bill and all of that. Another thing in Far Cry Primal that owl does though is drops things like fire bombs and beehives. Considering the amount of smoke bombs etc. that we've used in Assassin's Creed games thus far, I would not be surprised if that was also a function of the eagle. And I actually quite like the idea. I don't think very much should be taken from Far Cry games towards Assassin's Creed. The more different the franchises are, the better, in my opinion. But there's just a few good things that can be shared amongst them. Following in that theme, another one I think is crafting and healing. So in Assassin's Creed, you've always just bought medicine to heal yourself. So I feel like that should still be an option in the Egyptian markets. But perhaps also you could gather resources like herbs and create your own healing. Again, similar to Far Cry Primal, and also considering the time period, well, there was extensive technology in ancient Egypt. The weapons were still fairly primitive, so I would expect we'd be seeing a bow and arrow definitely. If the images then go by a spear and a shield, it will be some form of sword or scimitar, and I would expect the return of daggers, which I quite like. I quite enjoyed the combat or the weapons wheel from Assassin's Creed 2. I much preferred that to the Syndicate version of you get a ranged weapon, you get a melee weapon, that's you. I'd also rather see finding resources to craft weapons than the way Unity especially, but also Syndicate, it was a case of the more money you had, the more you advanced. Like, there was experience was a thing in Syndicate, but weapons wise you just had to get enough money. Now, going back to animals for a second, I think the eagle should definitely be your only pet. But what about dangers? So in Assassin's Creed 3, we had things like jaguars and crocodiles, and I think crocodiles should definitely make a return. One of my favourite features of the Syndicate map was the River Thames, hopping around from boat to boat. And when you fall off in this version, perhaps it's the Nile, and maybe you get hit by crocodiles. Why not? It could just add another wee interesting bit to the game. And perhaps if there's a day-night cycle, if you're out in the desert at night, jackals, lions. You never know. Going on along that same vein, I think we should definitely see a return to horses. I wasn't a huge fan of the carts in previous games, although you could definitely see an interest in perhaps a chariot race, considering we've had kart races before in games. In fact, that's one feature I very much enjoyed from the Assassin's Creed film, was you got a kart chase, very much similar to the first couple of games. So a chariot race could be possible. I think horses should definitely return, possibly also with camels, and you could perhaps have different benefits to having a horse or a camel, depending. Perhaps a camel would excel in the desert, horses would excel in the cities. Perhaps there could be a speed stamina thing, so horses will have no stamina in the desert, but camels will. But perhaps camels in the town suffer. Some variation of that. I'm not too clear, but I'd also really like to see an elephant ride, even if it's just one mission where you're storming somewhere from the back of an elephant, scaling up elephants with your climbing skills, shooting arrows from the back of it. It just sounds really interesting. Easily the most interesting and fantastic feature of an Assassin's Creed set in Egypt would be pyramid tombs. So we've had tombs in the game before, and while I am awful at scaling like puzzle climbs, the pyramids would be a fascinating challenge. So you would have normal kind of puzzles, you would have climbing puzzles, you'd probably have to climb up to the top to get in anyway. There'd be a lot of danger. I think that most definitely will be a feature, and it looks like that from the picture as well, to be honest. That would be brilliant, it really will. Now, aside from the missing or possible missing historical figures, another possible downside to this game would be, I believe it definitely predates the Templars, and depending on where you read, probably predates the Assassins as well. But the interesting thing about the Templars and Assassins is they're not religions, they're not even specific orders, they are creeds. So the words, so I vision two things here. Either there'll be some variation of the Assassins exists, and some variation of the Templars, undoubtedly. And perhaps you just kind of do the usual thing. But what if this could be the founding of the Assassins order? So you lay down the words, perhaps you're the founding member, and you lay down the words, nothing is true, everything is permitted, at the end of the game. That would be really, really interesting. Now, as for the Templars, as always, they'll be in power. They'll be the priests of the gods. They'll be leader of the guard, etc. And while I don't think you should be able to march in and fight 1,000 men, I wouldn't like to see too much of a return to stealth, but definitely a little bit more stealthy. I enjoy being able to go into an area and take out each person silently. I think that's interesting, and it gives me a challenge. But games such as the Syndicate one, by the end of it, if you were going, is it Evie the sister, who I played as most often, she was just fantastic from a point of stealth, and really no one could catch you. And even if they did, they were so good at combat that you wouldn't die. So I think they need to find a way to balance that. Perhaps find a new way to do their combat. I've been playing For Honor a lot recently, and I wonder if there's aspects they could borrow from that. Obviously, the complex combat system in that would be a bit of a challenge to put in an Assassin's Creed game, but there's no reason that you couldn't have blocking per direction, for example. So if an attacker's coming in, rather than just hitting Y to counter, you could have to match the direction they're blocking in, and that would mean fights would be more difficult. Perhaps on the level of there's bots in For Honor, so you fight against people who are obviously sometimes skilled, sometimes not, but always erratic and unexpected, whereas the bots are a bit more predictable, but they're still a fair challenge. So I think we need to look at something like that, and definitely limit to the quiver of your bow so that you can't just shoot everyone. Perhaps even not even one hit kills. I believe the Egyptians would have had shorter bows. I'm not sure if they would have had nothing that could punch armour, although then again, what sort of armour would the Templars have at this point. I'm not sure, I believe iron wasn't about, so weapons were made of bronze. But definitely an interesting... There's so much to think about. I'll probably do a follow-up video to this, especially if more information becomes available. But as for a story, we do have the basis, was it for the Greek gods, that already appeared as the ancient civilization. But I wonder if they could do a twist on the Egyptian gods. So for example, Horus, the eagle-headed god. You've got Set, you've got Anubis, you've got Bastet, Sekhmet, Ra. So there's a few kind of eagle-headed gods in there. There's a few that could perhaps represent the Templars, and of course there is Osiris, which is one of the rumoured names for the game. And now I wonder, could Assassin's Creed Osiris be either the foundation of the Templar Order? Maybe Osiris is their patron, and perhaps Ra or Horus is yours. It's just interesting. They've got so much freedom of the story. I really can't wait to play it. So this has been a video of wild speculation and baseless rumour, but I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.